Everyone in the room turned to look at her. The music was still playing. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed too loud near the kitchen, and then she slipped her hand through my arm like it belonged there. "This is Jake," she said, her voice steady even though I felt her fingers tremble against my sleeve. "My boyfriend." 10 faces stared at us, curious, surprised, measuring. Only she and I knew it wasn't real. And for one long second, I had to decide if I was going to step into the lie or walk away. My name is Jake Turner. I was 26 that fall, living alone in a small one-bedroom apartment on the north side of Ridgewood, Ohio. The place wasn't much. Faded kitchen cabinets. A couch with a dip in the middle. A window that looked out over a cracked parking lot where streetlights hummed at night. But it was mine. I worked as an HVAC technician. Most days, I drove my dented white truck from house to house fixing broken furnaces and stubborn air conditioners. I crawled through dusty attics and tight basements. I came home smelling like metal and insulation. And I liked it that way. I liked fixing things. I liked knowing something worked because I showed up. I grew up with my mom in a small town 2 hours south. My dad left early. Just disappeared one day with promises he never came back to keep. Since then, I believed in showing up. Or at least I tried to. That night, I had shown up to a birthday party. It was my old college buddy Ryan's place in the suburbs. Nothing wild. String lights across the ceiling, pizza boxes on the counter, a cooler full of beer sweating in the corner. About a dozen people scattered around the living room. I had come straight from a job fixing a leaking boiler, still wearing work jeans and a plain gray shirt. Nobody cared. That's when I saw her, Emma. I had seen her a few times before at group get-togethers. She was friends with Ryan's girlfriend. 30 years old. Freelance interior designer. Long brown hair usually pulled back. Calm eyes. The kind of face that looked serious until she smiled. And when she smiled, everything softened. She was sitting on the arm of a chair, holding a drink, listening while everyone talked over each other. She looked relaxed at first. Then the questions started. "So, Emma," one of the girls teased, "are you finally seeing someone?" Another chimed in, "You never bring a date. What's the deal?" Quote. Emma laughed, but her shoulders tightened. "Any secret boyfriend we don't know about?" Someone pushed. I knew that feeling. Being cornered by harmless jokes that didn't feel harmless. After a while, the room felt too loud. Too warm. I stepped outside onto the back porch for air. The fall night hit my face sharp and cool. It smelled like dry leaves and distant smoke. I leaned on the railing and scrolled through my phone, pretending I wasn't hiding. The door creaked open behind me. Emma stepped out. She stood beside me, quiet at first. Then she let out a breath like she'd been holding it all night. "You okay?" I asked. "They won't stop asking about who I'm dating," she said softly. So I panicked and told them I was seeing someone. I smirked. "Smart move." She turned her head slowly, looked straight at me. "Jake," she said, "can you pretend to be my boyfriend? Just tonight." I blinked. "Right now?" She nodded. "We go back in. Act like we're together." They stopped turning my life into a joke. No drama, no strings. I raised an eyebrow. "Do we have to kiss too?" Quote. Her eyes widened. A blush climbed up her cheeks. "No," she said quickly, then softer, "only if we have to sell it." There was something in her eyes, not just nerves, hope. "You seem normal," she added, "reliable. The other guys would make it weird later. You wouldn't." That last part did something to me. I could have said no. Could have gone back inside and stayed in my safe little corner. Instead, I heard myself say, "All right, I'm in, but we need a story." Her shoulders dropped in relief. "Okay, we met at a party. You fixed a broken ceiling fan. I almost spilled water on you. We got coffee after. About a month ago." "Simple," I said. I can do simple. When we walked back inside, everything shifted. Her hand slid into mine without hesitation. Her head tilted slightly toward my shoulder. She looked comfortable. "This is Jake," she announced again, louder now. "My boyfriend." A ripple moved through the room. "Well, it's about time," someone laughed. They pulled us to the couch. Questions flew. How'd you meet? At a party, I said easily. I saved her from a dangerous ceiling fan situation. Emma rolled her eyes. He's dramatic. I saved him. Laughter. And what do you like about him? Someone asked her. She glanced at me for half a second. He shows up, she said simply. On time. Every time. He listens. It was a small answer, but it hit deep. They turned to me. What about you? I looked at her, at the way her smile never quite hid the guard in her eyes. She knows who she is, I said. She doesn't pretend to be someone else just to fit in. For a second, the room went quiet. Then someone made a joke. The moment passed, but something had shifted. The questions stopped. The teasing faded. The party moved on. And we kept the act going. She leaned into me when she laughed. I refilled her drink when I grabbed mine. Our fake story flowed like it had been sitting there waiting for us. When people started leaving, she slipped her hand from mine slowly. Thank you, she whispered near the door. You saved me. Friends help friends, I said, even fake ones. She smiled at that, but there was something in her eyes that didn't feel fake at all. That night, driving home under the cold Ohio sky, I kept replaying it, her hand in mine. The way she said I show up. It was supposed to be one night. Just pretending. But when my phone buzzed the next morning with her name lighting up the screen, I had a feeling that porch moment wasn't the end of something. It was the start. And I didn't yet know how far pretending could go. The text was simple. Emma, hope my friends didn't scare you off. Thanks again for last night. I stood in my kitchen with a mug of cheap coffee warming my hands, staring at her name like it meant more than it should. I typed back. They were fine. But I think fake boyfriend services require hazard pay. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Good, because I may have told them we're coming to brunch next Sunday. Think you can handle round 2? I leaned against the counter and let out a slow breath. One night was a favor. Brunch felt like a choice. Yeah, I wrote. Tell me when and where. Sunday, 11. Little cafe on Harbor Street. Thanks, Jake. Really. The week crawled by. I fixed a cracked furnace in a brick duplex. Replaced filters in a church basement that smelled like old hymn books. Crawled through an attic so tight my shoulders scraped the beams. But every quiet moment, my mind drifted back to her hand, slipping into mine. Sunday came sharp and bright. Cold air. Clear sky. I pulled on a clean button-down and my least worn boots. The cafe was small and crowded, windows fogged from the warmth inside. The smell of coffee and fresh bread hit me the second I opened the door. I spotted them near the back. Emma saw me first. Her face lit up. Not polite, not staged. Real. You came, she said softly as I slid into the seat beside her. You promised food, I replied. Her knee brushed mine under the table. She didn't move it. The question started again, but lighter this time. So how did you two really meet? I jumped in. Ceiling fan emergency. I was the hero. She laughed and bumped my shoulder. He almost knocked himself out. The table roared. We finished each other's sentences without trying. Teased each other like we'd been doing it for years. At one point, while she was describing a nightmare design client who wanted everything painted dark purple, her hand rested on my knee under the table. It stayed there. Warm, steady. My chest tightened. Not fear. Something deeper. When the check came and everyone spilled out onto the sidewalk, the wind lifted her hair around her face. You're really good at this, she said. Professional, I replied. She studied me for a long second. Is this weird for you? I could have lied. A little, I admitted, but not in a bad way. Her lips curved slowly. Same. We hugged goodbye. It wasn't quick. Her head rested against my chest for a second longer than necessary. I felt her exhale. After that, the pretending didn't stop. There was a group hike the next weekend. Then, game night. Then, another dinner. Every time, she'd text, "Can you still be my backup boyfriend?" And every time, I said yes. But somewhere between the narrow trail where she slipped her hand into mine without looking around and the game night where we guessed each other's clues before words were spoken, it stopped feeling like backup. One night after cards and laughter, we stood under a flickering streetlight outside her car. The air was cold enough to see our breath. "You ever feel like we're not pretending anymore?" she asked quietly. My heart pounded. "Yeah," I said, "I do." She searched my face like she was checking for doubt. Then she leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't dramatic. No music, no fireworks. Just slow, careful, warm. For half a second I froze. Then I kissed her back. When we pulled apart, the world felt different. "Good night, Jake," she whispered. "Good night, Emma." Driving home, my hands buzzed on the steering wheel. Whatever this started as, it wasn't a game anymore. But real things come with real complications. And mine had a name. Ryan. He wasn't my best friend anymore, but we had history. Late-night study sessions. Road trips with bad playlists. Cheap beer and big dreams. And Emma was his ex-wife. I knew their story. I had watched it fall apart from the outside. Messy. Painful. Loud. I told myself it didn't matter. They were done. It had been over for years. Still, guilt sat heavy in my chest. Emma saw it before I said anything. One night, we were sitting on my couch, TV on low, my beer untouched in my hand. "Where'd you go just now?" she asked. I sighed. "Ryan." She nodded slowly. "You feel like you're crossing a line." "He mattered to me," I said. "I keep thinking about his face if he finds out." She pulled her legs up beneath her and faced me fully. "We tried for a long time," she said softly, "but we broke each other more than we built each other. It ended for a reason." She held my gaze. "Do you regret this with me?" The question hit hard. "No," I said. "That's the problem. I don't regret any of it." Silence stretched between us. "Then maybe we stop hiding," she said. "Tell him." My stomach twisted, but I knew she was right. A few days later, I texted Ryan. "Coffee this weekend? Need to talk." We met at the same old sports bar we used to haunt in our 20s. It smelled like grease and stale beer. The pool table still leaned slightly to one side. He clapped my shoulder when he saw me. "What's up, man?" We talked about work, old classmates, the team's losing streak. Then I set my glass down. "I've been seeing Emma." His smile dropped instantly. "My ex-wife Emma?" he asked flatly. I nodded. "It wasn't planned, it just—" He let out a dry laugh. "Of all the women in this city, you pick her?" Quote, "I care about her," I said quietly. "I respect you enough to tell you to your face." His jaw tightened. "You respect me?" he said. "If you respected me, you would have stayed away." His voice rose. People glanced over. "You saw what that divorce did to me," he went on. "You saw me at my worst. And now you want me to wish you luck." "I'm not asking that," I said. "I'm just telling you the truth." He stared at me for a long time. "You're not the guy the first thought you were," he said finally. Then he stood up and walked out. I sat there alone, hands wrapped around a drink I didn't taste. I had known it might go that way. It still hurt. That night, I drove straight to Emma's apartment. She opened the door before I knocked twice. One look at my face and she wrapped her arms around me. "What did he say?" she whispered. "That I should have stayed away." She flinched. "You can walk away," she said softly. "I don't want to be the reason you lose someone from your past." I pulled back just enough to see her eyes. "I'm not walking away," I said. "He's my past. You're my present. And if I'm lucky, you're my future." Her breath caught. For a long moment, we just stood there. Then she took my hand and led me inside. We had stopped pretending, and choosing her was about to change everything. After that night, something settled inside me. The guilt didn't vanish. Ryan didn't suddenly call to say he understood. But I stopped living halfway. I stopped treating Emma like a secret I had to hide. She started staying over more. First, it was a toothbrush in my bathroom. Then a sweater draped over the back of my couch. Then one evening she showed up with a small duffel bag and a shy smile. "I brought a few things," she said. "Just in case." I opened my closet and cleared space without hesitation. "Good thing I like you," I told her. She stepped close and kissed me slow. "Good thing I like you more." Soon my apartment didn't feel like mine alone. Her sketchbook stacked on the coffee table. Tiny plants appeared on the windowsill. 2 new coffee mugs replaced my chipped old ones. Mornings became our favorite time. I'd wake up early for work and start the coffee. She'd wander into the kitchen in one of my old flannel shirts, hair messy, eyes half closed. She'd sit on the counter while I scrambled eggs and tell me about a new design project. I'd complain about broken furnaces and stubborn landlords. It felt steady, not dramatic, not loud, just right. Then one quiet evening, everything shifted again. I was flipping through channels when she walked out of the bathroom holding a small white stick. Her face was pale. "Jake," she said, her voice shaking. "I think I'm pregnant." For a second, the room tilted. I took the test from her hand. 2 clear lines. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Are you okay?" I asked. She nodded, eyes wide. Scared, but kind of happy. I let out a breath that turned into a shaky laugh. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "And really happy." We stood there, holding each other in the middle of my small living room, both of us realizing that pretending had led us somewhere very real. The months that followed moved around, doctor visits and baby books. I'd rest my hand on her growing belly at night. The first time I felt a kick, I froze. "That's our kid," she whispered, smiling through tears. We talked about names in the dark. "I like Ellie," she said one night. Simple, quote. "Ellie Turner," I said softly. "I like that." When our daughter finally arrived, the world narrowed to one hospital room and one sharp newborn cry. Labor was long, hard. I held Emma's hand for hours, wiped sweat from her forehead, told her she was strong when she said she couldn't do it anymore. Then suddenly, there she was, small, wrinkled, loud. The nurse placed Ellie in Emma's arms, and everything went quiet in my chest, like the world paused to let me understand what mattered. The first weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and soft cries. We took turns pacing the apartment while Ellie screamed at 3 in the morning. Emma was gentle and patient, even when exhaustion carved shadows under her eyes. I thought it was just new parent life. Until it wasn't. She started complaining about a tight pain in her chest. Then came the fatigue that didn't match the sleepless nights. I pushed her to see a doctor. The call came on a gray afternoon. Emma walked into the kitchen with a look I had never seen before. Calm. Too calm. "We need to talk," she said. We sat at the table. She stared at the wood grain instead of me. "They found a lump," she whispered. "They think it's breast cancer." The word hung between us like smoke. Cancer. I felt like the air had been sucked from the room. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "More tests, treatment, chemo." That night she cried harder than I'd ever seen. "What if Ellie doesn't remember me?" she whispered into my shirt. "What if I don't make it?" Quote. I held her tight. "We fight," I said, "every single day. You're not alone in this." When her hair started falling out, she stood in the bathroom holding a handful of it, tears running down her face. I grabbed my clippers. "Sit," I said gently. "We're doing this together." I shaved her head while she watched in the mirror. When I finished, I kissed the top of her scalp. "You've never looked stronger," I told her. Chemo was brutal. There were days she couldn't get off the couch. Days she snapped at me from frustration and then cried because she felt guilty. I cooked simple meals she could keep down, held her hair back when she was sick, carried Ellie when Emma's arms trembled. My mom came to help. Friends dropped off food. But most nights it was just us 3 on the couch, cartoons playing low, Ellie asleep against my chest, Emma leaning into my side. Then came scan day. We sat in a cold waiting room, fingers laced tight. The doctor walked in with a careful smile. "The treatment worked," he said. "No sign of the tumor. You're in remission." I closed my eyes and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for months. Emma covered her face and sobbed. I held her like I was afraid she'd disappear. Life didn't snap back overnight. It rebuilt slowly, Her strength returned bit by bit. Her hair grew back soft and short around her ears. She started taking small design jobs again. I went back to full shifts but never forgot what could be lost in a second. One Saturday morning, sunlight poured through the kitchen window. Ellie was asleep in her crib. Emma stood at the stove making pancakes. I watched her. "What?" she asked, catching me staring. "Just thinking about that party," I said, "when you asked me to fake being your boyfriend." She laughed and walked over, sliding her arms around my waist. "Best decision I ever made," she said. A few months later, we stood in a small park near the river. My mom was there, a handful of close friends. Ellie held tiny flowers in her fist. We said simple vows under a tree, promises to show up, to stay, to fight for each other when things got hard. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, I kissed Emma slow and sure, while our daughter clapped her tiny hands. That night, back on our worn couch, Ellie finally asleep, Emma rested her head on my shoulder. "Remember when I asked you to pretend?" she said softly. I smiled. "Yeah, and I asked if we had to kiss." She traced small circles on my chest. "I'm glad you said yes." "So am I whispered. Because nothing about this was pretend anymore. It was messy, it was painful, it was beautiful, and it was real. If you believe stories still matter, go ahead and hit subscribe. Stories Beyond the Porch. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel.